we're going to talk about distractions. We're just going to go over that very quickly, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on them, but there's just something that we need to be touched upon when we're lifeguarding. So it's very important when we're lifeguarding and scanning that we don't have distractions. So what is a distraction? Basically, a distraction is anything that takes your focus away from doing a task. Right, so we move into the next picture, and as you can see, I can guarantee you right now that most of you are now looking at the cat, wondering if you fed your cat, does your cat have enough food for that day, that kind of thing. Oh God, my cat's so cute, I don't want to scratch him. And I can guarantee you're no longer looking at the kids in the pool. So we're going to just go over a few things about distractions. So distraction is something that takes your focus away from the task that you're doing at hand. And the most important one is when we're lifeguarding and we're scanning, we need to recognize when a patron is in trouble. The other thing about lifeguarding and scanning and stuff, it can be boring. We got one swimmer in this pool. It'd be easy to start daydreaming or think of other things. I don't know if you ever had that happen to you, that all of a sudden you might only have two people in your pool, and all of a sudden you look over and we're missing one. There was three, but there's one, and I didn't see that person get out of the pool. So now you got to make sure that nobody's in the pool or at the bottom. And sometimes it's because you were daydreaming or you missed something. So distractions are very important, that we understand what they do and how to limit them. Some external distractions. Someone comes along, wants to talk to you, whether it's one of your other lifeguards, your fellow friends, or whether it's just a patron that needs something fixed, or they're just asking a question. Keep the conversation short, to the point. If it's a patron that needs a longer conversation, you can either get another lifeguard to cover your area, or what you can do is if you have a supervisor, you can ask them to go speak to the supervisor to help them with their problem. Another external distraction is how hot the environment is you're working in. So if you're working in an indoor pool and it's getting hot outside too, and now the heat inside the pool is getting bigger, it makes it harder for you to concentrate when you're getting too warm. So make sure that you stay cool. You can dampen your shirt that you're wearing, right? Dip it in the pool, throw it on, it keeps you cool. The other option is that it could be cold out. If you're working in some of these outdoor pools, and we are in Alberta, that sometimes it does snow in July, we got to make sure that we're wearing the proper clothing to keep us warm, but also the idea that we're ready to respond at the same time. External distractions. Again, if your pool's playing music and it's very loud, and you have a lot of people in the pool at the same time that's very loud, that type of repeat loud noises on your ears can cause you to have a hard time focusing. The other thing about music is don't put on your most favorite music either when you're guarding, because once you put it on, you start singing along to it in your head or start listening to it more intently, you're going to have trouble scanning the pool. You're not going to recognize patrons in trouble as fast. Coming to work tired. You didn't sleep last night. You were out all night, did friends, and you only got 3 hours of sleep, and you have the early shift that starts at 5, and you came to work tired. So if you're fatigued and tired, you're not going to be able to scan or recognize properly somebody in the proper time. You still might recognize them, but did you recognize that patron fast enough? Again, it comes back to coming to work fatigued. You shouldn't be coming to work sick. If you're unwell and you're not healthy, especially now with our COVID, we're not supposed to be working at all, but if you do come to work and you're feeling under the weather and that, it's really hard to focus on the task at hand, other than maybe you're just thinking about how much you just want to throw up, or how you should just stayed at home, and then therefore it's taking away that focus. Other things we also have internal distractions. So the internal distractions, like that dialogue in our head, like what are we thinking about? If we're under a lot of stress, maybe we're going to school and we're getting to our finals, and when we go on the deck, we're really busy thinking about the finals that are coming up. So we have to learn how to minimize that. Sometimes we got to say, you know what, I'll have to think about that later. We're going to focus on what I have to do with the task at hand of scanning and trying to find patrons that could be in trouble. This also could be great. You could also have anxiety that you got to be able to control some of that so you can focus. Another internal distraction, well, it comes down to the medications, or if you've been drinking alcohol. So some medications, if you get put on a pain medication that's like an opiate or something like that, you really shouldn't be working as a lifeguard at that point. You probably should take some time off and make sure that you're not using it, or take Tylenol or some other type of medication. And there's other medications too that could affect how well you're able to focus. And again, alcohol, any consumption of alcohol just prior to a shift, you should never do. And if you are intoxicated, you should never be working. And even if you were out the night before, I drank a lot, got feeling pretty good, like, pretty intoxicated, and without a lot of time between, now you're fatigued. And it does sometimes take the alcohol some time to get out of your system, so you still could be coming to work inebriated. So minimize distractions. How to do that? So we're going to look at stuff like move around the deck a little more, cover your zone maybe a little more quickly, limit conversations. So if you got a patron ask you for questions, if it's going to be a big question, you know, either get somebody else to cover your area or hand them off to somebody else. Come to work rested. If you got a 5 o'clock in the morning shift and that's not your normally shift, try to go to bed a little earlier, but make sure that you're going to bed. You're not, maybe going out hanging out with friends to, instead of going to bed, you stay out to midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, and now you work at 3 and you only have 3 hours of sleep. Another thing I suggest to do too is in your zone, count the people in your zone, see if you can recognize them, that kind of thing. Does the number change? It just keeps you busy doing something. And again, make sure you check your mental health when you come to work, so that if you have anything that's on your mind that's pressing, that maybe you can find somebody to talk to there. Or just sometimes, we all get worked up because we got school, we got other problems happening in our lives and that kind of thing. Just understand that sometimes we just have to check that to make sure that we're doing the when we're scanning, we can actually do the full workload and be able to catch those patrons that are in trouble if needed. Just quickly, it's not actually in the module. It's called intrusion. I just want to touch upon this, and we'll go quickly over what intrusion is. Intrusion is basically combining 2 tasks. So if you're lifeguarding, watching the pool for patrons in trouble or possible drowning, we can't combine those tasks with doing water tests for the pool. We can't combine them with swimming lessons. So if I'm the swim coach of the team in a small town, I can't be the lifeguard and the swim coach at the same time. I can't do both those tasks safely at the both. So you always should have a lifeguard, somebody being aware. You'll see, I've seen videos on YouTube in the States where they got multiple instructors in the pool teaching, and a child actually ends up drowning and they had no lifeguard on deck. So who's responsible? So we should always, if you're teaching a focus on that student, are you able to put how much focus can you have on the rest of the students in your class? Taking cash, right? So you shouldn't be running the till and lifeguarding at the same time. And again, cleaning. We got to be very careful because it's easy for people to clean deck while they're busy lifeguarding, because you think you're kind of multitasking, especially near the end of a shift when you've been there all day and you just want to get out. So the biggest thing is intrusion is just when you're taking on another task in the facility that should be done separately from lifeguarding. Part of the intrusion is there's this thing called the IRD factors, recognition, intrusion, and distraction. So when this basically comes from Frank Pia, and these are the factors that when there is a drowning in the pool, and when it's usually more of an issue, these are the areas, the 3 factors that actually find why the drowning happened. So there was intrusion, the lifeguard was doing something else and then lifeguarding at the same time, or they're distracted while lifeguarding, and those 2 actually come back all the way up to the recognition. So it impairs the ability of the lifeguard to have recognition, or even the speed to recognize that child was in trouble, or adults in trouble for that matter. So the biggest thing is we got to remember is if we limit our intrusions, right? So limit our distractions, intrusions will actually decrease our recognition time. So when I talked about somebody, like you look over and it turns out they're actually a passive drowning victim, they appear to be at the bottom. If you were doing one of those 2, whether you were being distracted or you had an intrusion, was that person actually a distressed swimmer? And did they actually go through the progression of being a distressed swimmer to an active drowning victim to now to a passive drowning victim? And depending on the level of that distressed swimmer and how well they've swam at the beginning, that could be a very short period of time. That could be only 60 seconds. So remember, limited distractions and limited intrusion.